Hey guys, tonight we huddle close to the glowing mouth of an ancient clay furnace somewhere in sub-Saharan Africa, where sparks leap into the dusk like fireflies trying to outrun bedtime. You crouch on your heels, a strip of goat hide tied around your forehead to keep the sweat out of your eyes. The coals are already singing, their crackle not unlike the soft snap of knuckles before a fight. Iron lies in chunks by your side, the color of dried blood and the weight of tomorrow's promise. The air smells like burnt earth and ambition. You blink against the heat, but you don't dare look away for long. The flame is moody. It needs your voice to behave. This isn't a job you do in silence. That would be dangerous. Here, you sing, not for joy, not exactly. You sing to control the fire, to synchronize the muscles of your fellow workers, to alert the ancestors that you're reshaping their bones into tools and blades. Your chest hums with the old tune, passed down with the tongs and the ash-stained apron. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your location and the local time in the comments. I love seeing where in the world you're tuning in from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your voice joins the low harmony of the other smiths, old and young, as they prep the bloomery furnace, an upright shaft made of clay, stone, and whatever else they had handy. It's nothing like the blast furnaces of Europe or the big smoky nightmares of the industrial age. This thing's a gentle giant. You feed it ore, charcoal, and air, and it feeds you stories. Historians still argue whether these furnaces were first invented in East Africa or somewhere up in Nubia, maybe as early as 1000 BCE. What's agreed on? African iron smelting is one of the most independent, wildly creative metallurgical traditions in world history. The furnaces in Tanzania don't look like the ones in Nigeria, and the ones in the Congo laugh at both of them from behind their own flaming mouths. They're like jazz solos in the form of architecture. And no one here thinks the furnace runs on heat alone. It needs breath. That's your job, your lungs, and the bellows you'll work until your arms give out. And it needs music. Not just any music. Certain rhythms keep the flow going. Others, well, let's just say that apprentice who tried singing a war dirge during a smelt got a molten slap from the ancestors. Tonight, the iron sings back. You know the ore is ready when it glows like honey and feels almost soft under the long, hooked tongs. You tease it out, gently. No sudden moves. It's not unlike handling a crocodile, hot-tempered, sharp, and liable to flip on you without warning. You lay it on the anvil stone. The others form a circle. This is the birth of a blade, and you're the midwife. The main ingredient isn't the ore. It's time. You'll fold, reheat, hammer, and chant for hours before it becomes anything. Some say the more you sing, the stronger the blade. That's probably not true. But do you really want to risk it? You reach for the hammer, a squat, ugly thing, worn smooth by generations of sweat, and line up your first strike. The others time their hits to yours, like percussionists in a ritual band. You feel it in your spine, that low katunk, the rhythmic grunt, the hiss of wet sand nearby ready to quench the heat. You once heard of a forge in Mali where they played a string core beside the furnace, plucking notes to guide the heat's rise. Probably nonsense. But here, people swear the iron has ears. Better to play it safe, and in tune. You barely notice the sun fading. The fire makes its own day. You're shirtless, covered in soot, glistening like a mythic creature from the next village's nightmares. Your feet are calloused from the embers. Your skin smells like charcoal and muscle ache. And still, you sing. A low, wordless chant this time. Just enough to hold the moment together. Just enough to keep the flame awake. In the silence between songs, someone jokes that your voice cracked like the ore did earlier. You grunt. A smile flickers at the edge of your lips. It's all part of the rhythm. Crack, fold, flame, laugh, repeat. And deep in your bones, you know, this isn't just labor. This is ceremony. Each clang is a verse. Each beat of sweat, an offering. You're not just making iron, you're making history. You wake before the roosters and your arms already ache, but there's no time to stretch. The forge won't feed itself, and neither will your bellows partner, whose voice you can already hear humming a lazy warm-up tune from across the compound. You chuckle under your breath. He always starts with the same nonsense melody. Sounds like a goat stepped on a drum. Still, it's not just noise. It's a cue. You shuffle to your station barefoot, feet brushing aside last night's embers still whispering warmth beneath the dust. The bellows rest beside the furnace, two long wooden arms joined to leather bladders that puff with each stomp of your heels. One heel up, then the other. Right left, always in rhythm. The whole structure looks like it was built by someone who had a good idea, some spare cowhide, and no sleep. But it works. And it needs to work all day. Your partner joins you, hands still sticky with mashed millet from breakfast. Together, you fall into the pulse. One of you stomps while the other takes a breath, like a seesaw powered by lungs and stubbornness. The airflow whooshes down into the base of the furnace, feeding the flame and sending sparks upward like tiny dancers doing backflips. You both start singing, a wordless call and response that grows into something fuller, layered, alive. It isn't pretty, but it is perfect. Your voices time the stomps, and the stomps time the airflow, and the airflow keeps the flame steady enough to kiss the iron without warping it. This is more than a work song. It's an operating system. Historians still argue whether African smiths used these chants to actually control temperature, or if it was just a coordination trick to stay in sync. But to you? Same thing. You've seen furnaces misbehave when the singing stopped. You've heard them growl. The fire seems to purr now, content with your rhythm. You sneak a look inside the chimney vent, a hot orange belly rumbles in there, full of promise and potential disaster. Just the way you like it. Your grandfather once said bellows work is where your ego goes to die. It's grueling, thankless, and you'll sweat from places you didn't know had pores. But you can't make good iron without it. It's the heartbeat. And like a heartbeat, it's not supposed to stop. The younger boys watch from a distance, mimicking your heel stomps and elbow motions. One of them, too eager, gets the timing wrong and nearly stumbles into the edge of the clay furnace. You yell, not unkindly. He backs off, embarrassed. Later, you let him sing with you, on the quieter rhythms. Bellows music isn't just about pace. It sets the mood. War chants make the iron angry, good for spirits. Lullabies soften the edges, better for farming tools. Once, you tried mixing them. The axe came out with a weird bend, like it couldn't decide whether to harvest crops or heads. It hangs above your hut now, a reminder that even iron needs a genre. French folklore says some smiths could tell a man's character by how he sang while bellowing. A true-hearted person kept the rhythm steady, no matter how tired he was. The dishonest? Their song would slip when their thoughts wandered. You've never tested that theory, but you do watch people's feet when they stomp. Feet don't lie. The bellows themselves creak with age. You remember when the leather was fresh and reeked of goat. Now it's seasoned, like you. A little cracked, but still holding together. A breeze picks up, rattling the calabash gourd hanging by the forge, a charm someone's wife tied there to ward off evil. You think it's working. The flame stays tame. The iron is softening. The rhythm holds. Still, there are days when the fire won't listen, when the air goes thick and your song dies in your throat. On those days, you rest your forehead against the furnace and whisper. Not words, just vibrations. Like tuning a stubborn instrument. And if the forge likes you, it answers. There's a story passed between smiths about a forge in Ethiopia that sang back, literally sang, mimicking the bellows rhythm in perfect pitch. Some say it was the spirit of a dead smith who never got to finish his masterpiece. Others claim it was just a fluke echo off a clay wall. Either way, you always sing with a bit more feeling, just in case someone's listening. You glance at your partner. He's mouthing the next line of the chorus before you even start it. That's how you know the iron will be good today. By midday, the sweat pours like a second skin, and the air vibrates with rhythm. The old women from the village sway as they pass, basket balancing and humming along. One winks at you. Not bad for a man blackened head to toe in soot. You grin, keep stomping, and belt out the next verse louder. The fire flares in agreement. The iron hears you. You barely notice the weight of the hammer anymore. Not because it's light, it's not even close, but because your body has memorized the motion. Up, down, ring, up, down, ring. The sound of metal meaning metal slices through the air in bright, sharp notes, like a church bell that skipped worship and went straight to the after-party. You stand shoulder to shoulder with the others, eyes locked on the iron that glows like molten honey under the hammer's kiss. You're not swinging alone. It's a symphony of muscle and rhythm. One hammer lands, another follows a beat later, then another. 3 hearts, 1 pulse. It's percussion you can feel in your collarbone. And you're all singing again, of course. Not just for the heat this time, but for the flow of the strike. The song tells you when to hit, where to aim, how hard. You don't look at each other, you don't need to. The music keeps you aligned better than any foreman could. Historians still argue whether these hammering songs were coded instructions passed down through lyrics, or if they just evolved naturally, like birdsong matching the trees around them. Either way, you know one thing: when someone sings off-beat, the blade comes out ugly. You test the temperature of the metal with a practiced squint. Too red, and it's still squishy. Too dark, and it's brittle. But right now, it's golden. Just like the moment. You lift your hammer, let the others feel your rhythm, and bring it down in a satisfying clang. It lands clean. Everyone adjusts to your beat without a word. That's the thing about forging: you have to trust the invisible. You can't see the inside of the metal. Can't tell what the fire did to its spine. You trust the sound, the color, the song. Even the silence between hammer strokes tells you something. There's a superstition floating around the village: if the blade sings back when you strike it, it's destined for greatness. You haven't heard it happen yourself, but old Kofi swore one of his spears hummed like a flute the first time he forged it. The chief's nephew carried that spear into 3 battles and walked away with nothing worse than a crooked nose and 2 marriage proposals. Today, your blade doesn't sing back, but it doesn't scream either. That's a win. You lean into the next verse of the work song. It's one you remember from your father's forge, the kind that makes your shoulders square up without thinking. The lyrics are mostly nonsense, something about a snake with a silver tongue in a pot that boils from memory, but the rhythm is sacred. One of the younger smiths joins in a few beats late. His timing's off, but his heart is in it. You grin, hammer raise. He'll learn. Everyone sings off-beat at first. The fire cracks in approval. You and the others start folding the blade, literally folding the metal back onto itself to drive out impurities. It's slow, hot work. You hammer it flat, then fold, then hammer again. Each time you sing a little louder, pushing your will into the steel. You're not just making a tool. You're convincing iron to behave. Someone in the circle changes the song, transitioning to a call and response chant. You lead the call, the others answer. It's playful, even flirtatious. One line dares the iron to break, the next boasts that it wouldn't dare. You tease the metal like a stubborn ox, half mocking, half begging. Historians still haven't agreed if this personification of metal was metaphor or belief, but you've seen men talk to swords like old friends, and women sing lullabies to hoes before harvest. If it's metaphor, it runs deep enough to plant crops in. The air is thick with smoke and rhythm. A baby cries in the distance, but your ears are tuned only to the hammer song. The iron's edge begins to take shape, long and thin. This one's a blade for slicing, not for war, but for ceremony. A dance blade, maybe. You smile. That means the next song needs to be joyful. You shift into a lighter rhythm, feet tapping as you move to the beat. Someone behind you starts harmonizing in falsetto, just for fun. You roll your eyes but keep swinging. No rule says blacksmithing can't come with a little flair. Sweat streams down your temples, catching soot and turning it into streaks of war paint. Your fingers are cramped, your shoulder pulses, but the blade is almost ready for its first quench. The song softens as the iron dims. The last few hammer strokes are gentle, more like kisses than blows. You lay the blade flat, its surface gleaming like dragonfly wings in sunset light. The fire's out for now. The music fades into the night air. One of the smiths hums the final line of the chant like a lullaby, soft as breath. You nod, satisfied. Another blade born. Another song sung. Another piece of you now cool and sharp and waiting for its next verse. You shake the charcoal dust off your shoulders, stretch your back till it pops, and finally wander a few steps from the forge, just far enough to breathe something that doesn't smell like iron's armpit. The village path nearby hums with quiet activity. Someone's goat has escaped again, probably the same one that ate your sandal last week, and a couple of kids are chasing it with more laughter than urgency. Your work, though? That's never just for this village. Your blades and tools travel farther than your feet ever will. A man came through just last moon, robes dyed deep indigo, his accent sharp as salt. He bartered cola nuts and coral beads in exchange for a half-dozen knives. Said he was headed to the river, then across to the coast. Which coast? Didn't matter. The blades would go. Your work had legs. That's the quiet truth behind every forge song you sing. You're not just making iron, you're making currency, reputation, even alliances. The African continent has always been laced together by trade routes, visible only if you trace the paths of salt, copper, gold, and now, steel. From the Sahel to the Swahili coast, iron tools are as good as coin. Historians still argue whether early iron smelters spread more through trade or conquest, but it's clear your tools walk the trails of both. You've seen iron hoe blades exchanged for cloth dyed in distant rivers. You've heard of swords made in forest forges ending up in the hands of desert caravan guards. Today, a merchant from further south stops by. His donkey's breathless, and his hands smell like strange tobacco. He hums politely while you show off your blades, nodding in time like he's judging not just the sharpness but the rhythm it was forged in. You like that? The man doesn't haggle. He hands you 2 small copper bracelets and a hardened salt slab shaped like a biscuit. Fair trade. You make a mental note to share the salt with the older smiths. It'll go well in the yam stew tonight. Salt's worth singing about. Back by the forge, someone drops a chunk of fresh ore by the furnace. It clinks against the stone in an oddly musical way, and someone jokes it's trying to join the chorus. You laugh. Wouldn't be the first time the materials tried to take credit. You step inside the shaded hut near the forge and spot the trade map scratched into the clay wall, a crude thing, but it does the job. Dots for villages, lines for paths, spirals for water crossings, and little blade marks for places your iron has reached. You tap a new spot near the top corner. Just a few more trades and you'll hit the coast. Maybe your knives will cross the sea. Maybe they already have. A fringed tale says that long ago, a trader brought back a blade from a land across the water, not Roman, not Chinese, but something different. It rang like a bell when dropped. No one could forge its equal. Some think it was alien. Others think it was simply steel, perfected. Either way, it's become the holy grail of smith stories. You wonder if, centuries from now, someone will say that about one of your blades. The kids have corralled the dough finally, and they parade it past your forge like returning war heroes. You reward them with an old iron nail you bend into a spiral. They gasp like you gave them gold. It'll be a hair ornament by dusk, a treasure by tomorrow, and probably a lost thing by next week. That's the iron life cycle. You return to the anvil, brush away the ash, and inspect the next tool to be. A broad blade this time, likely for farming. That means durability, not flash. No songs of war for this one. You hum a harvest tune, something slow and bass heavy, like the thud of a calabash against earth. The others join in, and just like that, the forge turns back into a choir. Feet tap, hammers rise, voices thread through smoke and sweat. And somewhere in the distance, a donkey brays on beat, completely unaware he's contributing to a cross-continental supply chain. You grin. The forge has become more than a workspace. It's a node, a hub, a glowing, clanking post office of history, sending blades where your voice will never reach. But your rhythm will. You pause mid-strike when the furnace lets out a sharp hiss, too loud, too sudden. Not dangerous, just dramatic. You glance sideways at the old charm dangling on the post, a pouch of red cloth, tied with twisted twine, supposedly filled with ground bones and crushed herbs. You're not superstitious, but you're also not superstitious. Someone nearby mutters, "The furnace spirits are restless." That's normal forge talk. Every smithy worth its soot comes with stories. And yours? Yours is loaded with folklore so thick you could forge a horseshoe out of it. The elders say the furnace isn't just heat and clay, it's a living thing. Hungry, proud, jealous. One blacksmith claimed his furnace refused to light for 3 days after he tried smelting copper in it. Another said his flared up when he cursed midsum. Coincidence? Maybe. But ironworkers don't like coincidences. They like rituals. Historians still argue whether these beliefs were genuine spiritual systems or practical ways to enforce safety protocols. But you sing to the furnace just in case. You drop a bit of palm oil into the fire at the start of every week. You never whistle near the bellows. And you definitely don't joke about the furnace gods while the flames are up. That's just asking for a warped blade. Today's offering is a small sliver of goat fat, barely a bite, but symbolic. You toss it in with a whisper, the way you were taught. The flame pops like it's satisfied. You nod. Crisis averted. The stories go deeper. One tale says every furnace is linked to a single, slumbering spirit who remembers every blade it helped forge. Another claims that the red streaks you sometimes see in iron aren't impurities, they're spirit veins. If you strike them wrong, the blade carries bad luck. You once made a blade with a perfect curve and edge, but it never quite felt right. The client returned it 2 days later, said his cow dropped dead when he brought it home. You kept the blade and buried it behind the forge. No one talks about it now. The tree above that patch still hasn't grown straight. Your favorite story? The one about the wandering forge. Supposedly, it appears in the forest only on new moons, run by a smith who died mid-sentence. His ghost finishes his final blade over and over again, singing the same song for centuries. Anyone who hears it gets a vision of the blade they're meant to make in a lifetime. But if you interrupt the song, boom, your hammer hand withers to dust. Classic ghost forge drama. It's not just spirits, either. Every tool has a tale. That anvil you use? Legend says it once cracked and healed itself during a storm. One day you'll tell your apprentices the same thing. Whether it's true doesn't matter. The forge runs better when the stories are fed. Today, someone new arrives. An old woman from the edge of the village, wearing too many bracelets and a head wrap so big it defies logic. She brings a charm to hang on the southern post, a dried lizard tied to a stick with red thread. You raise an eyebrow, but say nothing. She says it'll keep away the staring eyes during the night shift. You believe just enough to let her hang it. The songs you sing shift, too, when you think the forge is listening. The notes get longer, softer, more respectful. There's a lullaby you only sing at night, when the embers dim and the air gets strange. It starts with a hum and ends in a whisper. Even the insects hush for that one. Fringe ironworking groups claim that singing isn't just tradition, it's spellwork. The vibrations align molecules, calm the iron, make it more obedient. Scientists today would scoff. But those scientists also never forged a blade with a mouthful of ash and a lizard tail hanging over their head. Their loss. You and your fellow smiths work in the stories as much as in the soot. Between hammer blows, you trade myths like currency. One says the fire spirit is blind but likes the sound of children's laughter. Another insists you should never forge on your birthday. Iron gets jealous of your attention. You remember that story tonight, because tomorrow is your birthday. You consider taking the day off. But then again, the forge does love a challenge. The fire steadies, the hiss is gone, and the heat flows like a living breath. You hum a verse that references one of the old spirit names, one no one dares say out loud anymore. You don't sing it as a joke. You sing it as insurance. And when the metal bends just right under your next hammer strike, like it's guiding you instead of the other way around, you offer a quiet thanks to whatever's listening in the firelight. The sun dips low, and that's when they arrive, the women. You always hear them before you see them, their soft singing curling around the forge like steam. It's not the bellow huffing, hammer-pounding chant of the ironworkers. No, this is something silkier. A slower rhythm. Quieter. But no less powerful. They come bearing water in calabashes and long, wrapped bundles tied with cloth. Not weapons, secrets. You never ask what's inside, because you already know the answer is different every time. Some carry herbs. Others, oils. A few, whispers say, bring things not meant for daylight eyes. They kneel beside the forge's shadow and begin to sing in a minor key. Cooling songs. Not to chill the mood, but to shift it. Quenching is about transition, heat to stillness, fire to form. The women's verses help the metal cross that threshold without cracking. Historians still argue whether these songs had actual metallurgical effect or if the presence of women simply marked the sacred final stage of blade making. What's beyond debate? When they sing, things change. You remember your first time seeing it. You were just a boy, soot-smeared and wide-eyed, watching your uncle raise a glowing blade over a carved trough of water while 4 women hummed like lullabies were sacred tools. The iron hissed as it touched the surface, steam erupting like the blade was screaming its final breath, and yet, their songs softened it. It sounded less like pain, more like exhale. Tonight, you're the one holding the blade, and your hands tremble just a little. Not from nerves. From reverence. You nod at the eldest singer, and she gives you that look. The one that says, don't mess this up. We've been doing this longer than you've been growing teeth. Fair enough. You plunge the red-hot blade into the water. SSSSHHHHHHHHHHHHHHH. The hiss is enormous. It rises like a snake made of mist. And the women don't flinch. They just sing louder, pressing palm to palm, guiding the steam with their song. The iron cools, locks into shape, and carries that moment forever. Some say the water used for quenching must come from a sacred river or a spring visited by moonlight. Others insist it's not the water, it's what's whispered over it. One village tradition says that each woman dips a finger into the water before quenching and names something she wants to forget. That way, the blade is born clean, carrying away those burdens. You like that one, even if no one will confirm it out loud. Of course, not everyone believes. A traveling apprentice once sneered at the ceremony, saying iron doesn't care who sings what. His neck's 3 blades shattered in combat. Coincidence? Probably. Or maybe iron doesn't like being mocked. Either way, he learned to hold his tongue and hum. A curious fringe tale from the grassfield says some quenching songs were hexes, disguised as hymns. A rival clan once accused their neighboring forge women of cursing an entire stockpile of arrowheads by singing a song backwards. No one could prove it, but the arrows did fly crooked for weeks. You raise the blade out of the water and inspect it. The color has gone from fire orange to river gray. Smooth, solid, sleeping. You tap the edge with your fingernail, ting. It sings back, faint but true. The women smile. You breathe. Now comes the oil. One woman steps forward with a gourd filled with thick, green liquid that smells like crushed leaves and pepper. She pours a line down the blade's spine. Another rubs it in with a cloth made from tree bark. You don't speak during this part. No one does. These women aren't smiths, not technically, but they are the keepers of temper. Without them, your blades would crack. Without them, the iron would keep its rage. There's one song they only sing during the last light of day. It doesn't have words, just a slow, descending scale, over and over, like a lullaby for gods. You hear it now as they begin to pack up, their songs retreating into hums, into breaths, into memory. One of them lingers. The youngest. She brushes a lock of hair from her brow with a motion that could slice silk. Her gaze flicks to your blade, then back to you. Name it, she says. Then walks away. You glance down at your finished work, still gleaming under a halo of steam and soft ash. You haven't named a blade in weeks. But something about tonight demands it. You whisper something private, barely loud enough for the blade to hear. And for just a moment, you think it hums in reply. The forge feels quieter the next morning, though it's probably just your ears still ringing from yesterday's song. You stretch your shoulders and roll your wrists, already anticipating the next round of hammering. But before your hands find the tongs, your ears catch something strange. Someone's singing, and it's off-key. Wildly off-key. You peek around the corner of the shed, and sure enough, there he is. The apprentice. The one with more enthusiasm than rhythm. He's swaying side to side, stomping the bellows like he's chasing a herd of invisible goats, and belting out a song in a voice that sounds like a frog being stepped on by a confused elephant. You wince. The forge winces. A coal pops violently in the furnace, leaping into the air like even the fire's trying to escape. You hurry over. Not to scold, yet, but to rescue the iron. You nudge the apprentice aside and take the bellows, smoothing the pace with your heels. The flame steadies, though it still looks a little annoyed. You hum a gentle correction to the rhythm, and the apprentice, bless him, actually picks it up. Sort of. Historians still argue whether song quality truly impacted ironwork integrity, but you've seen what happens when the beat is wrong. Once, an apprentice sneezed mid-verse and the entire smelt went crooked. Another time, a boy tried to sing a courtship ballad during spear forging. Half the blades turned out limp as boiled reeds. You sit the apprentice down and pour a cup of tamarind water. His face is a mural of embarrassment. You tell him the story of the legendary blacksmith Ndama, who sang so poorly during his first forge session that the furnace went cold for a week. What happened to him? The boy asks. You grin. He learned to drum instead. There's truth in that. Not everyone is born with a voice made for fire. Some are meant to hammer, others to listen. But the forge makes space for many rhythms, as long as you respect the beat. You hum a simple work tune and tap your foot. The apprentice listens closely, mimics the pattern. You let him try again, this time humming instead of singing. Much better. The flame responds with a soft purr, and a chunk of ore begins to sweat its promise. There's a joke among the elders. Better a silent smith than a tone-deaf tenor. But truth be told, every forge has one of these, an off-key hopeful with more heart than harmony. And every forge learns patience. Fringe beliefs even suggest that bad singers are protected by mischievous spirits, ones that cause harmless chaos just to hear their favorite awful melody again. There's an old tale about a forge haunted by a tuneless ghost who only sang wedding psalms during blade quenching. No blade made there could be used in battle. They'd bend mid-swing, like they were dodging out of sheer politeness. Today, though, you're determined to break the streak. You assign the apprentice to rhythm duty, 2 sticks, 1 log. Basic beat, no melody. He nods solemnly and starts tapping. It's not terrible. A little fast, but the anvil forgives speed if it's consistent. You begin heating the iron again, working in sync with the tap-tap rhythm. The other smiths pick up on the beat, some chuckling softly. It's not the usual chorus, but it'll do. As the blade begins to form, the apprentice watches wide-eyed. He's never seen a forging through from start to finish. You make sure this one's clean, tight grain, strong edge. You let him strike once, just once, under your hand. The hammer sings when it lands, and the apprentice beams like he just kissed the moon. You don't say anything. You just nod. He gets it now. Later, as you quench the blade and the steam rises like ghost breath, the apprentice asks, "Can I sing again tomorrow?" You smile. Only if the fire agrees. A coal pops again. Playfully, this time. You don't need to hear the drums to know they've started. You feel them, low, steady, crawling up through the soles of your feet and settling somewhere behind your sternum. War drums don't ask for attention. They take it. The forge pauses. No one says it, but you all feel the shift. The rhythm you've kept for days, song, flame, hammer, is about to change. Sharpening season has begun. You glance at the rack of blades lined up like waiting teeth. Not ceremonial. Not decorative. These are long, lean, and hungry. Spears, machetes, daggers. Some still carry soot from the quench. Others gleam like they've been whispering in the dark, waiting for war. You wrap your fingers around a half-finished spearhead, the metal cool but eager. It still needs edge. That's where you come in. The whetstone waits, slicked with oil and shadow. You crouch beside it, press steel to stone, and pull. SCCCHH, SKRRKK. The noise slices the quiet in half. It's rhythmic in its own way, less musical, more surgical. Across the forge, others do the same. The chorus is gone now. No one sings during sharpening. It's too serious. The only music now is metal against stone, and the occasional muttered oath when someone nicks a fingertip. Historians still argue whether blade sharpening rituals carried the same spiritual weight as forging. But ask any warrior which part of the process mattered more, and they'll show you the scar left by a blade that was 1 degree too dull. You run the edge again. Sparks flicker like impatient fireflies. This isn't just refining metal, it's preparing personality. Each blade responds differently. Some glide like dancers. Others resist, stubborn and stiff. You adjust. You coax. You find the angle that makes them sing. Every few minutes, the drums get louder. Closer. They're not calling you, they're calling the blades. It's a festival, yes, but one with sharp teeth. The village warriors will dance tonight, armed not with joy but with readiness. A whisper brushes your shoulder. Someone wants a curved blade. Not for war, but for hunting. You nod and switch tools. Your whetstone now curves with the blade, and your strokes match it. Short, circular, hypnotic. Your thoughts drift. There's a tale about a smith who sharpened a sword so finely, it cut the shadow of a leaf before touching the leaf itself. No one ever confirmed that story, but every time you find the perfect edge, you wonder. Some believe a blade must be sharpened in total silence, or else the edge learns arrogance and breaks in battle. Others insist you must murmur to the blade, reminded of its duty, its loyalty. You say nothing aloud, but in your head, you repeat the old phrase, cut clean, strike true, return whole. Every time. The apprentice, yes, that apprentice, is back, this time holding a smaller blade. He watches you sharpen for a minute, then mimics your motion. His strokes are too fast, too shallow. You don't correct him. The whetstone will do that. It always does. He flinches at the first screech. You smile. Now he's learning. You hand him a tiny, dull dagger and gesture for him to practice on that. He nods solemnly, then gets to work, tongue sticking out in deep concentration. Somewhere inside, you admit, you're proud. Outside the forge, the drumming stops. A silence heavier than iron follows. Then, a new beat, faster, tighter. That's the signal. The warriors are assembling. You stand, stretch your back, and start lining up the blades on a mat of woven reeds. The other smiths follow suit. Each weapon is inspected, balanced, and placed with care. You whisper a final verse, not a song, just a breath with weight. One by one, the warriors enter. Painted faces. Anklets of brass. Eyes that burn. They don't speak. They choose. A hand reaches for a blade you finished 3 days ago. Another picks one that fought you through its entire forging. You watch them leave, armed now not just with metal, but with music, song-woven, and stone-kissed. The apprentice, still holding his tiny dagger, asks quietly, will these blades come back? You exhale. Some will. Some won't. That's how it goes. The forge stays warm even after the warriors vanish. You sit again, this time to sharpen one final blade, for no one in particular. Just to remember how. Just to keep the rhythm going. Outside, the drums change once more. Celebration now. Or mourning. Sometimes it's hard to tell the difference. The forge doesn't sleep, not even during celebration. Especially not during celebration. Because once the blades are handed off, and the warriors take their edge into the dust and the drums, you're left with something quieter, but no less alive. Iron beads clink from the ankles of dancers now circling the fire pit, their steps deliberately light and teasing. They're not warriors. Not blacksmiths. Not singers of quenching songs. These are the dancers, the ones who turn forged leftovers into festival treasure. You watch as a girl spins in time to a drum that sounds like a heartbeat with stage fright. Her anklets sing with every pivot, thin iron coils threaded through goatskin, tiny slivers of blade trimmed into fringe, iron shavings hammered into spirals and shaped into charms. Once scraps, now sound. You know most of those beads came from your forge. You remember the crooked file you melted down, the leftover prongs from a snapped forked spear. You almost tossed them once. Now they jingle with life, echoing every twist and leap. Historians still argue whether these anklets were strictly decorative or had ceremonial significance. But anyone who's ever watched a dance like this knows better. When the dancer's feet hit the earth and the iron sings back, something sacred passes between them. Joy, defiance, and maybe a little magic. The dancers move in rhythm with the forges they've never touched, their hips narrating tales only muscle and metal remember. One man twirls with a full iron neck collar, engraved with wave motifs that shimmer like snakeskin. Another wears rings of forged brass on every toe, probably a status symbol, but also, according to legend, a sure way to keep evil from stealing your footsteps. There's even a rumor that one tribe used to hide tiny, sharpened iron thorns in their festival skirts, just in case a rival dancer got too competitive. Fringe history, sure. But you've seen those looks across the fire. It's not all peace and pirouettes. You step out of the forge to get a closer look, brushing soot off your arms and trying to remember how to stand without smoke in your eyes. Someone hands you a cup of warm millet beer. You nod thanks, sip carefully, and watch. That same apprentice, the one with the off-key warble, is there, too, this time clapping in rhythm and wearing a new iron pendant he clearly forged himself. It's rough, uneven, but it's his. And tonight, he glows like a sword just pulled from flame. A trio of older dancers breaks into a heel stomp pattern you haven't seen since your uncle's funeral. 4 steps forward, sharp knee twist, then back. It's a morning dance, but the way they're smiling turns it celebratory. You realize they're honoring someone, a warrior, maybe, or a smith. The iron beads on their feet never miss a beat. They remind you of bellows rhythms, smaller, tighter, but no less essential. You think back to that time a hunter came asking for iron bangles to wear while stalking game. To frighten the spirits out of the bushes, he said. So they don't trip me up while I'm aiming. You made him a set with crescent moons carved into them. He returned 2 months later, grinning and holding a lion's tooth. He never missed a shot. Fringe beliefs say that iron on the body isn't just protective, it's seductive. Spirits, ancestors, and even rival dancers are drawn to the shimmer and song of moving metal. That's why some dancers hide a tiny iron hook in their braids or under their tongue. Not visible, but felt. The fire in the pit blazes higher as the lead dancer steps in. Her iron skirt jangles like 1,000 whispers. She stamps once, and the music stops. Then she hums. It's not a smith's song, but it's inspired by it. You hear the notes, the ones from the furnace, from the bellows, from the anvil. Rearranged. Decorated. But undeniably yours. She begins again. The circle widens. Anklets flash, wrists flick, and the music rushes forward like a forge-fed flame. You smile and step back toward the forge, the cup still warm in your hand. You may shape blades and tools by day, but by night? By night, your work dances. The festival lingers well into the night, but your mind's already turned back to the forge. The blade you finished yesterday, curved, narrow, meant for close work, still hums faintly in your thoughts. You didn't mean to form a bond with it, but sometimes that happens. A good blade isn't just metal and edge, it's attitude. So now, under the ghost pale moon, you sit quietly beside it. Tonight is for naming. You place the blade across your knees and whisper a few lines from the forging chant, low and slow. It's not about ceremony, it's about conversation. You're not naming the blade so much as asking what name it wants. That's not unusual. Historians still debate whether naming blades was a personal quirk or a widespread African custom with religious roots. But every smith you know does it. Some speak the names aloud, others just think them, eyes closed, lips unmoving. Either way, the name always comes. Eventually. You've heard stories of blades that refuse to be named. One blacksmith swore his finest sword stayed cold to the touch until he gave it a name that came to him in a dream. Another said his machete wouldn't cut palm branches until it was called by the name of a thunder god. Tonight, you settle on something simple. A name that means to return. Because this blade, you feel, is not meant to be lost. You trace the edge with your thumb, carefully, it bites, and set it aside. Some smiths take this further, swearing their blades choose who may carry them. There's a tale from the savannah where a chieftain tried to wield a ceremonial sword forged for his rival tribe. The blade flew from his grip 3 times in battle, once even slicing his own sandal strap. It knew, the smiths say. It remembered who sang it. You've never seen that happen, but you have noticed when a blade just won't sit right in someone's hand. It feels twitchy, or too heavy, or it pulls to the left. No sharpening fixes it. The person just isn't meant for that blade. You once crafted a short iron dagger with a crosshatched grip and a 3-point edge. Everyone admired it. Strong, balanced, elegant. But no one could keep it. First it slipped from a dancer's belt. Then a merchant lost it while crossing the river. Finally, a hunter brought it back, swearing it had followed him for 3 nights before falling from a tree above his hut. You keep it now, buried under the forge's floorboards. If it wants to stay, you won't argue. In the distance, a drum skips a beat, then starts again. The celebration hasn't ended, just slowed. The fires turn to coals, the dancers to shadows. But you're still wide awake, tracing memories through steel. A fellow smith enters the forge, eyes bleary, holding a sword with a chipped spine. I think it's sulking, he mutters, handing it to you like it's a stubborn child. You laugh, take the blade, and run a thumb along its length. It's unbalanced. Impatient. Probably rushed through the quenching. You light a small coal pot, reheat the blade, and hum, not a full song, just a phrase. Enough to ease it back into place. As it heats, your companion talks about a blade he forged last season, named it after his mother's laughter, he says. Gave it to a boy who's never lost a duel since. He grins, eyes glowing. Maybe it's pride. Maybe it's belief. Same difference around here. Naming a blade is like planting a secret. You won't always see how it grows, but you'll know when it blooms. Tonight, the forge is quieter than usual, but still alive. It breathes with every ember. The walls flicker with old light. You sit there, blades cooling beside you, and whisper names like prayers. Some will be wielded by dancers. Some by hunters. Some may never be held at all. But each has its story. And each begins with a name only the fire and your heart agree on. You awake to the sound of arguing voices and the smell of roasted yams, 2 things that never arrive separately. The elders have gathered near the meeting tree again, sitting in loose robes, cheeks puffed with opinions and suspicions. You can tell by the tone it's one of those debates. Iron is either divine or dangerous, and no one wants to budge. The topic flares up every few moons. Is your forge sacred protection, or a cursed beacon? You sit on a smooth log just close enough to eavesdrop while pretending to pick grit from your toenails. A classic move. You've used it during 3 family arguments and 1 failed marriage proposal. An elder with white braids taps her staff and says, "Iron keeps away witches. It makes their curses bounce off the skin." She raises an arm weighted with iron bangles, daring anyone to disagree. Another retorts, "Yes, but only because it attracts spirits first. Witches love forges. They come to steal embers for their pots. The others murmur. One chews a yam like it's the root of wisdom itself. Historians still argue whether iron in African traditions was seen mainly as sacred, cursed, or both. The archaeological record's confusing, and the oral histories contradict themselves. But sitting here, you realize, it's not about fact. It's about reputation. Your forge is powerful. Everyone agrees on that. The only debate is what kind of power it is. You remember when your cousin gave birth and her husband tied a twisted iron nail under the bed to confuse jealous spirits. Or that time someone buried iron shavings at the village gate before a storm, convinced they'd turn away lightning. And let's not forget the smith in the next town who was accused of summoning rain with his bellows, until the rain washed away the accuser's roof. Then there's the darker lore. Tales of smiths who melted blades from cursed metal, scrap iron taken from battlefield graves, or rusted tools once used in betrayal. Those blades always seem to vanish. Or worse, return on their own. You've heard whispers of a forge in the deep forest where the smith only works at night. No apprentices. No songs. Just silence, sparks, and a crow that circles the chimney. People say the blades made there never miss. They also say no one who owns one sleeps well. A fringe story insists that iron dust can be mixed into food to protect against poisoning, but if it's done wrong, it drives the eater mad. You wouldn't know. You stick to salt and pepper. Back at your forge, you remember the protective charms people ask you to shape: iron rings for newborns, talismans for the sick, tiny daggers tucked into rafters. One woman begged you for a nail blessed by fire to plant under her garden to keep away snakes. You gave her one. 3 weeks later, she brought you a basket of okra so perfect it looked fake. You've never claimed to be a sorcerer, but you have noticed the air change when certain songs are sung during forging. You've seen blades snap for men who brag too loudly. And you've definitely seen the fire flicker violently when someone lies near it. Sometimes you think the forge doesn't like dishonesty. Sometimes you think the fire listens more than it should. The apprentice returns, again, with a strange question: can iron carry memory? You pause. He explains, if you forge something while thinking of someone, does the metal remember them? You consider this. Then nod. It's not a scientific nod. It's a forge nod. You felt it. That blade you shaped while mourning your uncle? It never dulled, never cracked. The hoe you made the morning after your first heartbreak? Bent on its second use. Iron remembers. Not in the way trees do. But it holds echoes of the fire, of the hammer, of the you that touched it. Back at the tree, the elders have shifted to laughter now, swapping stories of cursed bangles and unlucky toenail clippings. The sun climbs. The forge calls. Before you leave, the braid-haired elder winks at you. Make your iron sing today, she says. You smile. You always do. There's a hush around the forge today. Not the soft, sleepy kind, but the tense silence that sneaks in just before something unthinkable happens. You sense it even before the chief arrives. He steps into the clearing like a thundercloud wrapped in silk, heavy eyes, ringed fingers, the kind of man used to people saying yes before he's even finished the question. His guards stay behind him, but their hands never leave their spear grips. Not a great sign. He doesn't greet you, just points at the largest blade on the rack. A ceremonial sword, newly sharpened and still humming with yesterday's song. I'll take that, he says, voice calm as a crocodile blink. You glance at the blade, then at him, then back at the blade, and you say, no. The air cracks like someone dropped a hot coal into water. You don't say it loudly. You don't shout. Just a simple word. But in this context, it's a full-blown thunderclap. The chief blinks slowly. His lips purse. One guard steps forward, but stops when the chief raises a finger. Why not? He asks, though he doesn't sound curious. He sounds amused, like someone testing the sharpness of your spine. You swallow. That blade isn't meant for you, you say. Historians still argue whether blacksmiths in African societies truly had spiritual immunity from kings and warlords, or whether the stories are exaggerated. But here, today, you feel it in your bones. You are not just a worker. You are a maker. An iron, once made, has loyalty. That blade was forged for someone else, you continue. It already chose. The chief's nostrils flare. But then, something shifts. Maybe it's the quiet firelight reflected in the sword's curve. Maybe it's the subtle way the air stiffens around the forge, like even the wind is holding its breath. Or maybe, just maybe, he remembers what happened to the last chief who demanded a blade that wasn't his. That story is always told in whispers. A smith named Thibaut refused a greedy king who demanded his forge's finest spear. Thibaut warned him, "This weapon knows its purpose, and it will not serve another." The king took it anyway. The next day, during a hunt, the king tripped. The spear lodged in his own foot, deep. Infection followed. Fever. Then silence. Thibaut outlived 3 more rulers, and that same spear now hangs above his family shrine. No one touches it. You don't bring up Thibaut now. But maybe the chief remembers. After a long pause, the man laughs, short and sharp, like something snapping. "Fine," he says, turning away. "Forge me something better." You exhale, quietly. The guards follow him out, but one lingers. His eyes dart toward the blade. Not with greed, with respect. Maybe even fear. You place the sword back on the rack, resting it gently. Its edge catches the light like a wink. Later, you tell the apprentice what happened. His mouth opens so wide you worry a bird might land in it. "You told the chief no?" You shrug. The blade said no first. That night, the forge feels warmer. Not in temperature. In mood. Like it appreciated your spine. Like it approved. Fringe tales say that a forge remembers acts of courage the same way blades remember names. That when a smith stands firm, the iron becomes easier to shape for a while. That tools forged after a refusal to sell out are sharper, truer, stronger. You smile as the next blade begins to glow under your hammer. It doesn't hiss. It purrs. You tap it twice, just to be sure. It taps back. The fire's slow today, like it's reminiscing. You let it. Some days the forge wants fury, and some days it wants to sit back, stretch its legs, and tell stories through smoke. So you give it time, feed it gently, and let your hands drift across the tongs without pressure. That's when someone brings up that blade again. You don't even turn around. You know which one they mean. You forged it 2 harvests ago, short, thick, sharp as gossip, and no one's seen it since. Some say it was stolen. Others say it was cursed. You say nothing, because honestly, you're not sure either. You remember it well. A strange piece of metal, darker than usual, came to you from a merchant who couldn't say where he got it. It hummed differently in the fire. Almost too fast. You had to change the song to match it, 3 beats slower, and in a minor key. The blade formed quickly, like it was impatient. When you quenched it, the steam rose silent. No hiss, no screech. Just a sigh, like a spirit escaping. That should have been your first warning. Historians still argue whether these vanishing blades are just lost artifacts or symbols of stories too big to explain. But around here, they're legends. And this one? It's grown its own legs. Some say a hunter took the blade deep into the forest, then came back talking in riddles and wearing animal skins stitched with iron thread. Others swear a dancer found it and used it to cut the cord tying her fate to the wrong man. Most claim it sank, literally sank, into the earth during a storm, swallowed by jealous soil. You recall something different. The night before it vanished, you dreamt of fire with no smoke. You stood in a room full of blades, each whispering the same name, but none you could remember when you woke. The blade was gone the next morning. No sign of break-in. Just a warm spot where it had been. The apprentice is staring at you again, wide-eyed. Was it evil? You shake your head. No. Just particular. That's the thing with iron, it's not moral. It's not immoral either. It's responsive. It takes on what you give it. That blade? You might have fed it too much ambition. Or maybe someone else came with stronger intent. There's a fringe belief that certain blades are unfinished until they reach the hand they were meant for. That no matter how well you forge them, they'll resist all owners until the right one appears. Like a puzzle piece from a different box. You once met a traveler who wore an iron ring shaped like a serpent biting its tail. Said he found it inside a hollow tree while fleeing raiders. Said it burned cold when he touched it. He swore it whispered to him, guiding him through the forest. You believed him. Mostly because the ring matched one you'd lost 3 years earlier, sold to a merchant who vanished downriver. That's how iron works sometimes. It disappears. Then reappears. Sometimes shaped like a new story. Sometimes as itself. Back at the forge, a customer asks for a blade like the one that vanished. You raise an eyebrow. You don't know what you're asking, you say. I don't care, he replies. You decline politely. Later, when no one's watching, you kneel where the blade used to rest and press your palm to the ground. It's cool now, but once in a while, you feel something faint. A vibration. A memory. You don't expect the blade to come back. You don't need it to. Its story's already in the fire. In the songs. In the way you changed your rhythms slightly after forging it. And every time you strike iron now, you listen more carefully. Because some blades don't vanish. They just move ahead of you, waiting for you to catch up. The boy's beat is off again. Not the off-key croaking from before, he fixed that, mostly. This time it's the tempo. Too rushed, too sharp, like he's chasing the fire instead of leading it. You tap your heel against the clay floor to bring him back. Thud, thud, thud. Slow it down. You hum a line from an older rhythm, one the forge responds to with a steady flicker. The boy hears it, nods, and adjusts. Better. This rhythm isn't just habit anymore. It's inheritance. You've been at the forge long enough now that the way you move, the pace you strike, the way your breath folds into the heat, it's seeped into you like smoke into cotton. Which is why, when the visitor arrives with a shiny box and blinking sandals, your eyebrow does a full acrobatic routine. He says he's from the city. An engineer, he says, like the word has teeth. He's tall, smooth-skinned, smells like petrol and plastic. He watches you hammer with the expression of a man observing an animal perform something unexpectedly graceful. I've studied this, he says, tapping a tablet. Your forging rhythm matches certain polyrhythms in Afrobeat tracks. It's quantifiable. You pause mid-hammer. So? He blinks. It means this is music. Functional, culturally encoded music. Like ancestral coding. You shrug. We just sing so the mellow listens. He grins. Too fast. Right. But now we can sample it. Remix it. Bridge the past and the present. He gestures to a drone hovering outside like a lost mosquito. This forge is legacy data. Historians still argue whether modern music rooted in African metalworking rhythms is homage or appropriation. Depends on who's singing and who's profiting. But here, it's just strange. This man sees your soot-covered hands as notation. Your bellows as a metronome. Your callous feet as ancient sound bites. You watch as he records the hammer strikes, the hiss of quenching, even the offbeat apprentice muttering to himself while stoking the coals. He promises to send you the track once it's mixed. Later, by lantern light, the apprentice asks, "Are we famous now?" You shake your head. We're echoes. Still, a part of you buzzes. Not with pride, but with curiosity. If the rhythm can travel, maybe the story can too. You remember a cousin who moved to the city and built skyscrapers. She said welding made her feel like she was still at the forge. Different fire, she laughed, but the mellow listens the same. There's comfort in that thought. That even in towering cities with blaring horns and elevator music, there's still room for the old rhythms, hidden in scaffolding welds, subway clinks, or even the chorus of a dance track sampled from your village hammer. A month later, a trader brings a speaker the size of a yam basket. Plays you something strange, smooth, layered, electronic. And underneath it all, you hear it. The bellows rhythm. Your rhythm. Your voice, sampled and looped. Echoing under synth and bass. It shouldn't work, but it does. Somehow, the Song of Iron has found a new forge. Digital, global, glowing in neon instead of coals. You let the track play again. This time, you tap along. The apprentice joins you. Then another smith. Pretty soon, you're singing the old song over the new beat. And it fits. Fringe theories claim that sound outlives bone. That a song, once sung with purpose, never fully disappears, it just hides until the right ear finds it again. Tonight, your forge sings in two tongues. One ancient, one new. The fire approves. The forge sighs like an old man at rest. You've banked the coals, cleaned the tools, and brushed the ash from the floor, not that it ever stays clean. The day is done, and the night is thick with a calm that settles on your shoulders like a well-worn shawl. You sit cross-legged just beyond the glow, letting the fire's warmth wrap around your back. Everything's still warm, the ground, the stone, the inside of your chest. Your hands rest on your knees, knuckles raw but content. Tonight, there's no festival. No visitor. No broken blade or off-key apprentice to guide. Just the soft clink of iron cooling, the occasional whisper of wind brushing past the forge roof, and the gentle hush of a world exhaling. You glance around at the tools. Each one holds a story. The hammer you reshaped after it cracked on a rainy day, the tongs you found buried under the hut floor, rusted but stubborn, the anvil with a chip shaped exactly like the continent. And the songs, oh, the songs. You've sung 100 in your time. Some about rivers. Some about war. Some about a very unfortunate chicken that wandered into the forge once and became a cautionary verse. All of them still echo here. Historians still argue whether these songs qualify as oral archives, if they can be trusted as sources. But you know better. You've watched a song sharpen a blade's edge more precisely than any whetstone. You felt a tune guide your hand when words failed. You've learned that some truths don't fit in scrolls or libraries. They live in rhythm, in soot, in heat, in the silence that follows a perfect quench. Tonight, you hum one of the lullabies sung during evening quenches. It doesn't mean anything special, just a melody of soft vowels and softer memory. The apprentice is already half asleep on a mat near the wall, a strip of cloth over his eyes and a smile tugging at one corner of his mouth. You let the note trail off and lean back against a post. Your muscles ache in that oddly satisfying way, like your bones are grateful you didn't ask too much of them today. You think of the first time you stood by this furnace, barely tall enough to see the flames. You think of the first blade you finished, crooked, ugly, and adored. You think of the one that vanished. The one that stayed. The ones that dance. The fire burns low now. Just enough to keep the darkness from swallowing the forge entirely. It's not threatening, just a suggestion. The kind of darkness that says, go ahead. Rest. You've done enough. And so you do. The forge will sleep. The iron will wait. And you, for once, can just be still. //